Good evening, folks. Welcome to Here's the Deal. Again, I apologize for the late start. I had a engagement that I wasn't aware of until a couple hours ago. So, at any rate, we got a good show for you guys tonight. We've got Micheal Coachman and Paul Sorum on tonight. We're going to be talking election integrity, and that's what a great topic to be talking about because of what's going on here next week. Next week, I'll be going down to the Lindell event to speak down there at his event about what's going on in the state as far as our elections. And this Election Integrity Act measure that we're going to talk about tonight might very well be a very big part of that. So with that being said, I'm going to bring on Micheal Coachman and Paul Sorum. Maybe
Hi.
Micheal. There he is.
There he is.
All right. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you guys for being on, and I appreciate your guys' patience with our schedule. I do apologize for that again, but thank you for being on tonight.
You're welcome.
So how are we doing? How is everybody?
Doing simply marvelous.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Simply marvelous.
Yeah.
So this Election Integrity Act, it's a measure to go on the ballot for 2024. Now,
Yeah.
You guys who would like to start on what it is? And
Yeah. Why don't I just give a basic idea, Coach, if that's okay?
Well, I could talk about how it came about.
Sure.
I did. I'm with the Republic of North Dakota, and we were talking as a group to see what we do to fix our elections, and so we were coming up with a platform on how do we do it, how are we going to bring it to the Secretary of State. And I said, you know what, let me go ahead and check with Paul Sorum, have him look at it, what he could do, and update it. And he looked at it and went, Coach, I already have something like this already written. And I went, you do? And I said, well, send it to me. I looked at it and looked at what we had. I said, we can mash this and see what we can do. And I tell you what, it's been clicking on all 8 cylinders since. And with that, Paul could talk to you because he said he had it written a couple of years ago. So go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. So after 2020, I was watching the news, kind of a news junkie, and I realized, people on the left and the right were missing the whole point about election fraud and discussing it. And my point is a really simple one: is if voters have questions about an election, but they're not allowed to review what happened in the election, it's not an election. It just isn't. If you can't verify what happened in the election as a voter, what good is the election? It's not an election. And so at some point in late 2021, I just started writing, notes about what's wrong in North Dakota. For example, in North Dakota, once an election is done, they bundle they count them. They bundle up the ballots, the actual paper ballots, and they store them. And under our state law, nobody can access them except, the Attorney General and the Secretary of State, maybe the governor, but they're tucked away. And so even a recount, if you get a recount because the margin between, 2 candidates or whatever is too small, which is pretty small, you still don't get to review the ballots. So we're over here just taking the word for our elected officials, which, trusting elected politicians is probably not a good bet, as we know.
Right.
And so my point, and I've been on a couple of radio shows like Joel Heikamp's show and things in the past. And I said, well, Joel, in North Dakota, there's no way to detect election fraud. So if you can't detect it, do you think it's ever happened? Yeah,
right.
100% chance it's happened. So that's the problem. And that's why I've said to people, look, the people on the left and the media call us election deniers. Well, who's the denier of elections? We just want to audit or review what happened, and they won't let us. Okay. And this has evolved over many decades, right? Where we have state laws and regulations about elections. that have taken it away from us. In other words, we can't go in and see what happened. We're not allowed to. Now the courts won't let us either, right? You don't have standing. Well, yeah, we do. It's our sacred franchise, is our right to vote. And yet, like almost out of 60 cases on election fraud on the presidential election, I think only 3 of them actually went to court, and the rest were thrown out for lack of standing. Well, I say, look, if something bad happened in Georgia and that started to swing the election for president, that affects me here in North Dakota. And it has affected all of us very drastically in a bad way. So, like I said, if we can't verify elections, they're not elections, period.
I agree with that. You and I have talked a little bit. So I've only known about this for a few days, or about a week actually. So I've talked to both of you a little bit. And Paul, I agree with you on what you just said. We've talked about that quite a little. You said that you've had this route for a couple of years. So I guess let's back up a little bit. What got you to even think about doing that? I mean, a couple of years, how many years are we talking?
How many years am I talking that I've done this? It's not just this.
That you had this road up.
Almost 3 years I've had it in my hard drive. Yeah. And we last night we met, 2 nights ago we met online, and we collaborated, and we tweaked it a little bit, and it's gotten a lot better in the last couple of weeks. But I actually have probably 20 initiative petitions I've written. So
cool.
How about one called Energy Freedom Act? What about that one?
There we go.
A good one. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch I've thought of. And when I ran for governor in 2012, in North Dakota, what I realized is that the state and the party weren't following the law in many areas. And I started studying the law back then, and I've never stopped. And now, for the last 6 years, I've done legal work full time, and I'm actually an architect. So, I'm still licensed, but I'm really just do legal work. And so my research has led me in all these different directions. I'm licensed to practice law on the Fort Berthold Reservation, and so I'm planning to continue this work. But in the process of becoming a student of the law and understanding what's really wrong in our state and in federal government, it's really given me great insights on what we could do. And initiated measures. I mean, I ran for office more than once, and I don't want to run for office again because I don't want to work in a swamp. A, B, I think as an activist and somebody not more knowledgeable about the law now, I think these initiated measures are very, very effective. We saw that with term limits, right? When people go and they see a practical measure on the ballot to amend the Constitution, and they say, I don't know anything about this, but do you think our politicians should have term limits? And they're like, yeah, and they voted for that, So this is the power of this, is to take power away from our state government, take power, in the process we can take power away from the federal government and assert state rights with these petitions. And there's a lot we can do. So the key is to get some funding here and get this underway.
Okay. So I read over it a little bit here, the new one that you'd sent me. And man, I like a lot of this. Like, for instance, here it says, since voting integrity is essential to a free state, all voting in North Dakota elections shall be done by paper ballots and counted by hand on the day of the election.
Yeah.
Now, when I had driven Dr. Frank around, when we had Dr. Frank here, that was one of his things is to go back to paper ballots, because as we know, there is devices in those machines where they can turn them off, the modems. They don't need Wi-Fi. They don't need a network. Yeah. They can just automatically turn them off.
Yeah, you can also put conditions in software that do the same thing without even being connected to the internet. They can just be programmed to do these things. So And I have an IT background and computer science background in addition to my architecture, and they're just not safe. There's just no way to secure them. And so,
Right.
and
Another
the other thing you mentioned there is election day. You know, when I first started voting, I won't mention the year, but it was an election day, and you had to be there. And if you weren't there, you don't vote. That's it.
Right.
And they've chipped away at that to almost make it like, you know, what is it? We don't even know. Is it an election month or an election season? You know, and we should get back to having an election day, one day, you know.
So another thing that I found good in here, and a lot of people don't know about it yet, and actually it was talked about tonight in the previous meeting I had, but ranked choice voting is prohibited in the state of North Dakota. Who wants to tell us what ranked choice voting is?
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, some states have been pushing this. In fact, I think they have it in Alaska. So what it means is you keep voting until someone gets a majority vote. So let's say there could be, let's say there are 5 candidates or 3 candidates, and the highest vote getter has, you know, let's say he got 43% of the vote. Okay, well, depending on how you codify ranked choice, they'd probably take the top 2 and revote, right? Or the top 3. Let's say you take the top 3 and revote. And, you know, it might be that the person who was in last place,
excuse me,
you know, because other candidates dropped out, those voters go for the last place candidate of the last 3. And then the guy who definitely wasn't in the running, the candidate that wasn't in the running, might win the election because they might have 2, 3, 4 rounds of voting. And that's just wrong, you know?
Right.
That's just wrong. You know, that's how you get some radical leftists, socialists in office in some of these states that are, you know, more conservative.
Well, now, correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe that's how Sarah Palin actually lost.
Yeah, it is.
This last. So, and I was going to say this too. Marvin piped in here and said ranked choice voting was first passed in Fargo.
Yep.
Now, I heard that they did use it in 22. Is that correct? Can we verify that or not?
I think they did it in 2020 also, or they were.
Did they?
In 2020, yes.
Well, this petition would put an end to that. You see it's creeping in here. And Fargo and Cass County is usually pretty liberal in its voting, and the ranked choice helps them. It really does.
Yep. So as I go on here, and of course I'm just kind of cherry picking here, but these are the points that I feel that are you know, very important. And if I miss something, by all means, please.
Well, I think you should tell everybody that, you know, there are the line items that go from A through JJ. So, and then there are a few other line items that are totally separate. So that's,
1,
you know,
2, 3.
that's a lot.
Yeah, there's 4 pages, if I'm correct. So one of the other things I found that was pretty good here is no citizen will be denied access to election information resulting from an audible election, with the exception that the identity of the individual voter shall not be revealed on ballots that have been cast. The provision is in effect retroactively to statehood.
Yeah. You like
now,
that?
I do. So would that mean, okay, so for instance, obviously we're working to correct our elections, and we've done some walkbooks, but they were from 2020, from the election in 2020. Now, we've requested several times the voter rolls from different counties and that to know luck. So would that mean if this passed that we would be able to do that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, I believe in federal elections, they have to keep the election information for 22 months. And whether or not they still have 2020 information or 2022 by the time this passes, as it's possible to get this on the June ballot, you know. But let's say in the worst case scenario, it's voted on in the fall ballot in 2024. That provision would allow you to review what happened in 2024, which I think is important.
Yep, I agree.
And
Excuse me. So here's some other lines that I really like. All elections will be administered by a duly elected county auditor. You mean you can't appoint a county auditor then?
No, this
Really?
is scary that some counties are appointing their auditor, because the auditor has a lot of power.
Yep.
The county is arguably the second most powerful political subdivision next to the township. And so they should be elected. This makes sure, well, they have to be elected or you're not going to have much of an election when this passes. And it really needs to be that way. Now, there are a lot of different, like you said, a lot of line items here. And somebody recently asked me on the phone, a legislator, why is it so long, Paul? It's just so long. And I said, okay, well, can you take one line item out of this without risking our vote? And the answer is no, you really can't. It's long because this is how many problems we have with our elections. This is how long the problem list is, and we're going to solve it.
Yep.
I think a lot of people forget the most important freedom or power you have is that vote, even if it's one vote. And so I know one lady who did I think it was 5/8 votes, where they just take part of the vote and make another vote by taking 3/8, make another vote. This cuts a lot of the issues that we're having out.
Yeah.
One paper, one ballot, and you probably read that it have for that specified county that voting, and it also has a water seal, so you can track it. Every one. And Paul mentioned earlier that we don't have standing. Every person who votes has standing.
We do.
Every person. So anybody, if you voted, should be able to go into the auditor and say, okay, let me see what happened.
So this act ensures every voter in North Dakota has standing.
They have standing.
Yeah.
That is the key.
It's not explicit there, but you'll see if you have, because they're open and you can review it. If you find evidence and you put that letter, you put a letter with the evidence to the state auditor, they have to audit because there's evidence. That means you have standing. You have standing to force the auditor to review everything and see what happened. And we can't do that. We can't get the evidence. We can't make somebody do an audit. We can't go to court because we don't have standing.
Right.
If we can't have real elections, why do we bother pretending we're a state? I mean, this is who is the person who said this is Elon Musk said this is rebranded communism. That's what we have in North Dakota in our elections. It's rebranded communism.
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Coachman, about the watermarks, because I was just going to ask what that meant.
That means for every county, because each county has their own county seal. So you have your original county seal for that county, for whatever it may be, Dunn County, Cass County, Grand Forks County. They have their weather seal, and then they have a watermark that will also be on there too. So you got a double verification, so no one can duplicate or send in a whole bunch of, do a drop box and do which again, in that it eliminates drop boxes. But it makes it easier to track. So if there's, say, for instance, 3,000 eligible voters, you should have 3,000 ballots. And each of those ballots should have a coordinating number with that. So when you send it out, you should have 3,000 ballots. And when the person comes and drops off their ballot or do it, you should remove it right there. So it's easy to track for every county. It's not a state where you have 750,000 ballots. Those ballots are specified for that county.
Yeah, they've been just mailing ballots to everybody. It's just crazy. There shouldn't be
Mhm.
any mail-in ballots. There should only be absentee ballots with good cause. And these drop boxes are
So
completely unregulated. I mean, there's many ways to tamper with our election with these drop
right.
boxes. They got to go.
So just for people out there, what is the difference between a mail-in ballot and um I
Absentee.
lost my there you go. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
I was
An
reading your
absentee
mind, bro.
ballot. Thanks, Coach. I appreciate that. What's the difference between the two?
Well,
The-
so what happened is in 2020, Doug Burgum, through executive order, just rewrote our election. He wrote new election laws, basically,
Mhm.
which he has no authority to do, but he did. And this whole idea of mail-in ballots is, oh yeah, we can't go in person. We have to mail them in, or just throw them in a drop box that's out on the street corner somewhere. But a mail-in is like you fill out and you just put it in an envelope, inside an envelope, and you mail it to whomever, the auditor or whomever. But an absentee ballot, you actually have to apply for it with a form and say why you have to have it. Because let's say you're in the military, or let's say you are going to be at the Mayo Clinic for 3 months. So you can't be there in person, so good cause. You have to have a reason. And then you have the form and you mail it in. That's an absentee ballot. The mail-ins, they're just sending mail-in ballots to everybody. It's just crazy for no reason.
Okay.
That's just totally insecure. And we saw that with
Right.
the 2000 Mules movie, how horrible that is.
Yep. No, that is for sure. Couple more of these lines here. All county precincts must have an open polling locations, and all county precincts shall have paper poll book specific to the precinct. So that right there, I know even in Williams County, we had problems with that because we had people driving from Williston 40 miles to Ray. And when Ray didn't have theirs when COVID first broke out, they were driving an additional 10 miles to Tioga to vote there. So we had two, I think during COVID, we had two polling places, one in Williston at the Arc, and then we had Tioga Community Center. And then in 22, we had three. We had Ray was able to do theirs again in their newly remodeled City Hall. So that right there is, I like that. So now, is that going to say
we could have had all the polling places at Walmart because they were still
yeah, no kidding, right?
Or liquor stores, but then people under 21 couldn't vote then, but they were open.
So now would this need to go into maybe a little bit more as how many polling places per county per the population, or
I believe there's already established of how many polling places should be in your county.
Okay.
I'd point out that when they reduce the number of polling places, you're naturally, because you're making it more inconvenient, especially in rural areas, like you mentioned, and there are people who just aren't going to vote who would want to vote,
Right.
Is that an election where you make it too hard for some people to vote, so they just don't vote? It's not right.
Yeah, well, at some of these district meetings that I was at, or district reorgs, you could call them, it was like it was intentional that they only had one place where you could sign in and all that, just to keep people from actually coming in the place. And at any rate, so I'm going to back up a little bit, and I'm going to read this line here. It says, the office of the Secretary of State shall adopt rules providing audible voting systems for the tabulation, recording, preservation, and scanning of all ballots cast in the election. These rules must be followed at all times. And then the lines that we just went through. Besides that, what else do you guys? I mean, there's so much in here. Obviously, we need all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys right now want people to know about this? I mean, that you feel is that we haven't really covered?
Yeah, what they need to know is we're not having real elections in the state. And because we can't detect election fraud, it's assuredly happening. How often, we don't know. We can't know. And so it's if this gets on the ballot, the opposition are going to say, oh, it's just too expensive to have paper ballots. No. And the answer is, look, if it's too expensive to have real elections, which we're not having, then what are we doing? We had paper ballots always in the past, and we've managed to get that done very efficiently. So don't let anyone kid you. Oh, we can't have paper ballots. We can't follow these rules. We better, and we must. Otherwise, our children will continue living in this rebranded communism that we're living in now when it comes to elections.
In France, their elections are, I'm not saying they're a great example of a lot of things, but their elections is a paper ballot. So they hand count them, and they are done that night. All their elections. So it's not like we can't do it. Like Paul was mentioning, we had it done before. And as this person, Kai Paulson is saying here, when you start having early voting, you know how to pad the voting, because if you say, oh, this person's got a lot going for them and we don't want them to win, we can switch out whatever we need, because there's extra ballots all over. That eliminates that issue. I even got documentation, I think it was in Jamestown, where there was 2,300 ballots in a hallway. No one's tracking, all different types of things. So if it's a one day, I believe a lot of business owners will get in that mindset. No, this is an important day to vote. So we can eliminate a lot of these issues. And what's really sad, Shiloh, I don't know if you ever go around asking people, ask them was there any election issues here in North Dakota? You'd be surprised. Some people will say maybe federal, but not here in North Dakota.
No,
I got documentations left and right, and I gave it to Dr. Frank just in Grand Forks County with ghost precincts, all these different things. And it's for a person, even what was going on in Wisconsin and Arizona, to come up and say there's no election problem. Where are they? Where are they? Either the part of the swamp, or they just really
don't know. They're just not alert.
They just don't want to. But when it's a political person, that what worries me. That was really worrying me, because you have a lot of stuff that's going on here, and this has probably been since 2020 the most contested issues in our elections, if not started in 2016, because because Hillary was supposed to win, but there were so many people voting for Trump, the system couldn't overwhelm, couldn't make up the difference. So you knew it was happening then, and possibly before. But for us to have the freedom and know the peace, that we don't get frustrated, because I know at one time, if you probably did too, to say, you know what, we see what happened, why bother? But then after you got over that little 15-second pity party, says, no, I'm going to do something about it. That's what this is all about. This is what I'm doing, Paul doing, and this is what you're all about. Is coming out and say, you know what, we need to fix this. How do we do it? Just like an elephant, one bite at a time. This just came up the right time. Paul may have had it 3 years ago, but it wasn't the time, because a lot of people weren't in the mindset to say, hey, look, Trump lost, whatever. Nothing was coming out. So, no, now we know. Dr. Frank, Mike Lindell is showing we have a lot of Chinese interference.
Yeah.
And North Dakota is not exempt.
No.
When we say North Dakota is a red state, it's not Republican red, it's Chinese red.
Yep. I would agree with that.
You know,
So
you're going to see federally, you're going to see these Trump indictments turn into the election case, right? You're going to start to see the evidence come forward that we haven't seen before from Trump's group, that they have hard evidence of election interference, hard evidence, very, very catastrophically effective evidence as to election fraud. And that's going to come out federally, which is why this is good timing. I call this the Election Integrity Act petition, and it's based on the Reagan motto of trust but verify. Right?
Trust and verify.
gotcha.
In 2021, in the state legislature, there were something like 42 or 44 election integrity bills, and all of them were killed, every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell you? That tells you there's a problem, a serious problem. And the
We were
powers
in
that
on
be
some of
have their
those.
minions running around and say, "Oh, these people are doing such a great job with our elections." And I say, there's a problem. There's a
They
serious
wouldn't
problem.
even let us into the Secretary of State's office when we had press conference with Dr. Frank,
Yeah.
not but 50
Lock
feet
that
away
door.
from their door.
Lock
And they
that
still
door.
won't. They still won't answer anything that I ask them.
Look,
So
to get this done, we're going to need some money. We need organizations to help raise money or donate money. We don't have a website set yet, but they could contact you, Shiloh, or Coachman,
okay,
and we can set something up. But it takes money,
definitely.
because to get that many signatures, you have to hire people who are pros to get the signatures, and that can be done. I've worked on others, but that's needed. If you think this is as serious as we think it is, then donate some money.
I definitely do. We'll be talking here some more, and I'd like to have you guys on again as this goes. So, I do want to.
So can I, Lydia? I saw
Sure
you
you
come
can.
up earlier. Lydia, can you put your contact information? This is the person that.
Yep, Lydia. How do you say your last name? I don't want to butcher it. Is it Giesel? Gazelle?
Too late.
I'm sorry if
Too late. You said you didn't want to butcher it. You did.
I probably did. I do apologize, Lydia.
Yeah.
I know
Lydia,
how you feel. I've been called Keebler a bunch in my life, so I'm not a Keebler elf. I'm a Kilber, so I know how you feel. Go ahead, Coach. How do you say your name?
You messed me up.
I apologize.
I will find out later, and she'll let me know.
Sounds good.
I wonder, Lydia, are you still on?
Are you still on, Lydia? She hasn't said anything.
She posted something already.
Yeah, she's posted a couple times. Is there any other questions from any of the viewers that we have? Lydia, are you still on? If she is, he's not. She might be mad.
No, I doubt that. I'm gonna text you.
I do apologize for not saying your name right. Here's one more thing that I found interesting on here while we're waiting for that. Any qualified elector, upon providing any evidence of voter fraud or election fraud, may submit a written request to the North Dakota auditor to perform a full forensic audit on any election results. Now, that's a big deal there, because when Dr. Frank was here, he was telling the story about when they took Mike Lindell's phone, and then when when he found out about it, he was on a plane to his next event, and so he started backing up his phone because sure enough, he thought he would be next, and sure enough, when he stepped off that plane, they were there to get his phone. And so what a forensic audit is it's done by the feds, isn't it? Or who's it done by?
It could be either done by the auditor's office or a third-party accounting firm.
So what's the difference?
It's not a federal thing.
You're right. It's my mistake there. what is the difference between a forensic audit and just a normal audit?
Well, technically, I won't get. Basically,
Just an overview.
you're just looking back in time to see exactly what happened. You know,
Yeah,
Mhm.
not just what the vote count is, but what happened in the process. You want to know what happened.
yeah, down to the nanosecond.
Yeah, it's like,
there's
well, this
any
happened now, and then this happened, and then it went there. So you follow the documentation from the precinct on up. You know, just find out what happened.
Gotcha. It says the auditor, upon receiving each written request and evidence, must perform the requested audit, and the audit must begin within 14 days of receiving the petition.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
elections are
that.
time sensitive.
Yep, I like that.
because
Yeah.
they may have to do a new election for those individuals, and if you want
Mhm.
it done within at least 60 days.
Yeah,
And the only way you
Gotcha.
can do that, if there's a discrepancy, you need to find it sooner. You can't
Yeah.
go a year and a half and say, okay, yeah, we found some, but you know how sometimes the courts go and say, well, too bad, too sad, we've already been there already. We need to fix it. We need to fix it quick. But I don't foresee a lot of that happening under this system because it's so accurate and short. You know, it's in other words, if all the books are open and you can verify quickly, I really don't see a lot of that happening where you have to contact the auditor in 14 days because it's hand voted. Because you got, when I used to count in Grand Forks, we verified everyone. If there was somebody who had might have mismarked it, we looked at it. So it's going to be verified. So I think it's going to be really hard for a very few times that you're going to see something like that happen. But just in case, it's there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So a little more technically, the forensic audit is really looking for very specific evidence that could be, you know, even potentially used in a court of law. And it's a specialized thing that some accounting firms do. But you want a forensic audit so you know, okay, here's evidence that this happened. And it could be used in court because it could be a crime. It could lead to criminal indictments. That's why this kind of audit's important. And you know, right now, I mean, if you're an election official at any level and you know that there's no way to detect election fraud, then you know it's an incentive to just fudge things and do what you want, right? And in 2012, there was a sheriff's election in a county, a rural county out west, and people contact me and say, we watched them setting aside the ballots and not putting them in the machine of people we know who were, you know, voting conservative, and they set them aside. And we think they just didn't get counted. And then this other guy won, and nobody likes him, but he won. And, you know, we don't trust him as sheriff. And what can we do? And I was like, this was all new to me. And I'm like, well, yeah, well, you could get a recount if the count's close enough. And then they said, oh, no, it's not going to be close enough. No, it should be, but it's not. And then they said, well, if it's close enough to require a recount, are we going to get like an audit of it? And I said, doesn't look like it. You know?
And one thing I have learned in a lot of our elections, they're never close.
No. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to commit elector fraud, the last thing you're going to do is allow a recount. Yeah. So it's always going to have too big a margin for a recount.
Lydia says it's pronounced Guessly. Guessly. Okay. I do apologize on that again, Lydia. So if you want to put your information up about people being able to contact you to donate and get more information, I'll definitely put it on the screen.
Okay.
So, yeah, with that being said, gentlemen, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you guys?
No, I think we got it covered pretty well, Coach.
You know,
there's a lot.
Right. There's a lot more details.
If you look at
there is
4 pages. There's so much information.
There is.
There was a bunch of us who really took a lot of time to to go through that and make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are
Yeah.
dotted.
It started out as notes. Like I would see a news article in some other state and I thought, oh, that's a problem here too. So I'd open it up and write down another line item.
Yep, I think this is the first step of really getting back to free and fair elections.
Yeah.
Freedom.
Right.
This is really not about me and Paul or our group. It's about freedom of the people. We're doing this for the people because you know I was thinking to have opposition against this, that they will sit down and read this. I want you to think so. Who would, in their right mind, when they read that from A to double J, and say, no, this is not good for the state of North Dakota?
The people in power.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's about it.
The people running the NDGOP.
That's putting the power right back into the people. Speaking of the GOP, what it also does too, that if Shiloh wants to run for an office, $150, you can have you and your group.
You can create your own party, and without any signatures, you pay $150 and you're on the ballot.
Yeah.
What it does, it takes power away from the uniparty in this state.
Yep.
And that's the key right now, because right now you really don't have a voice because, you know, I already wrote the GOP new chairman, and I said, are you going to remove a lot of this stuff that Perry put in there, or as far as pay to play, all this other stuff? If you run as in a different party or something different, you can't for 6 years. How is that? How is that fair to the people? And then it was another issue I was having is that for somebody to run in the GOP, you have to have 10 chairmen to sign your paperwork to say that you can run. That's not up to the people. That's up to 10 chairmen.
Yeah.
Not the people. So we're losing a lot of great candidates, and that's why you see a lot of these candidates recycling. I like to see a lot of people, even if they may seem out to the people are going to have a lot of people in left. That's why you have the debates. You have at least 2 or 3 or 4 debates. That's how you choose the best person. And that's the thing. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, that's the thing is I mean, Rick was in that one debate, but other than that, there is no more debating. I mean, in the last 3 years since I've been involved, I have seen very little in debating. I mean, even here when I ran for school board, there was no debates. I mean, it was just
it's like crazy. This here. Why do I need to debate you when I know I'm going to win?
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty much.
It's just a form of censorship.
It's what, you know, because if I debate you and you find out where I really stand, I don't want that. I'd rather just go with no debate, let the people that are in charge of the machines flip the switches. I'm golden.
Yep. That's
take
the
it away. And
I agree.
And then that takes it away. We have a lot of people who need that we as North Dakotans need to stand up and to be in those offices. But they know there's no chance with all of this pay to go, and if you come too well known, they come after you and your family and everything else. Everybody. What we have is that the Constitution, we the people are supposed to govern ourselves. We the people. And right now, this here will put the power back into that, we the people. I love it. I like it. I really like it.
I agree. No, I totally agree. So one thing that I wanted to comment on that, we were talking about, or Paul, you mentioned that with these hearings with President Trump, that some of this is going to come out. one thing that I found interesting was when Dr. Frank was here, he said that they had all the evidence they needed. He was standing in the Oval Office with them, and President Trump had all the evidence that they needed to overturn the election. The only thing that they didn't have was one state legislature to stand up with him.
Yeah.
Now let that sink in a minute. We as North Dakota pride ourselves on being the quote unquote super majority, right? And most of our elected officials were, correct me if I'm wrong, were endorsed by President Trump at one point in time.
Oh,
And
Kevin Kramer and
yeah,
a few others,
those,
but I mean, this is really hard. It's just a fact now that our uniparty isn't Republican. I mean,
we've been infiltrated.
yeah, and I wouldn't even say they're Democrats. They're just
No, they're
it's authoritarian. It's just
They're
authoritarian.
socialists and globalists that are
Yeah.
running the party.
Yeah, they're socialist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you
Yep.
just have to embrace what it is for real.
Well, this puts power back into the people. That's
Yeah.
the key right there. Is giving the people their voice back.
So I'm going to ask you guys this because I ask a lot of people this when they're on the show, and we get to talking about doing our civil duty and getting involved and getting people involved. In your guys' opinion, how do we do that, especially with something like this? Let's face it, not a lot of people are involved anymore or even informed.
Well, if they want to keep their freedom, then we need to work together on these initiatives. We need to have some money. There need to be volunteers. There need to be people who are paid to manage it. I mean, I can't manage this whole thing because I have a full-time job and a family, but if we're able to do those things, we can be very effective. Our government's out of control. If you look at what they're spending in this state, it's ridiculous for how many people we have. Look at what we're spending on education. It's just off the charts. We're spending more per purse per taxpayer than most other states. And what we need to do is take power away from these people in Bismarck. And we need to do it through the initiative because that's the only effective tool. As they have very little, they couldn't stop term limits, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This just comes to voters pulling a lever. And it's like, well, should we have election integrity? And they're going to look at that, even if they're not engaged. If they see that on the ballot and they're voting, they're going to say, yeah, we need election integrity. And they'll vote for it. Mm-hmm. It's just basic common sense things. And we're close to really losing it. I mean, there are people talking about a lockdown for, global warming or climate change lockdown. Are you nuts? I mean, we have to stop this stuff, and we can do it at our border, our state border.
I think
one of the things that's going to happen when this passes, you're going to see a major fire through the people of North Dakota. And the reason I say that is because they know. It's just like if you know that somebody's ripping you off, you're not going to keep going by them.
Yeah,
it's a common thing. But if they know that their vote is going to mean something when they go into the polling place, you're going to see a lot more people.
Yeah, you'll see. If this was in place, you'd have a lot more voters because they'd be like, "Oh, I know it's going to count, and if I don't think it's going to count, I'm going to find out if it counted."
Right, and crooked people are not going to run because it's going to be exposed. They know they can't run on their own merit and stuff. That's why they have the big dollars and all this other stuff, and they flipping the votes. They're not going to run if they know they can't win.
Right.
Because they're not doing it for the people. They're not doing it to better our state. They're doing it for their own prestige and their own financial benefits. So if you got open books and open records, they're going to expose who those crooked people are, and they don't want to be exposed, so they're not going to run. You're going to see a lot more honest people who are not afraid to do what's right run, I believe, for the state. And you're going to see a lot of people get some synergy going and it's going to change our state. Our state is going to be. I would not be surprised if what we have right here, what you have in your hand there, Sonal, that other states will want to adopt what we bringing forth.
Yeah.
Because it eliminates the machines. It's going back to the basics. It's just like basketball, football, whatever. What do you do when you start losing? You go back to the basics. This is going back to the basics, and this is how we're going to wind up getting our state back, if not our nation.
Like I said, Shiloh, I've over the years since 2012, I've written about, I suppose I have over 20 initiative measures on different subjects. This one is certainly by far the most important.
Yeah, because if we don't have a vote, it doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah, nothing
else matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can eliminate property tax. You can give everybody a gun. But if these guys are still in charge, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
Because your vote is the most precious thing that you have. It doesn't matter if you have $5 or $50 million. When you go into that voting room, it's one person. You're equal. Everybody's on the same plane, and that's the key right now. You have elitists, and then you have the rest of us. And right now, they think we're a bunch of knuckleheads, and they're going to do what they want. And what this does is this: no, you don't have that power over it. Because the way this Constitution is written, you're supposed to do what we say. It's going to flip government around, because most people believe federal government, state government, and then townships and counties. No, it's the other way. It's we the people, and all these other governments are underneath us. That's the way it's set up. And with this, it's going to flip it to the right way, where we the people are the voice.
I call it vote but verify.
There you go. I like that. I like that. Vote but verify, because that's exactly what we need to do.
Yeah, there's no way to verify.
Well, I really appreciate your guys' time, and this is just, I'm excited about this. And so what is the next step then for this?
Right now, we just finished up this weekend from looking at it, and pretty much this is, I'm not going to say it's the final, because there's always something that we may have missed. But until we get it to the Secretary of State's office, if there's some tweaking we need to do, we'll do that before we go. But right now, it's pretty much, I would say, 99% done. The other thing we need to just finish up on is get our sponsors. Once we got our sponsors, we'll bring it into the Secretary of State's office. They approve or disapprove, which I can't wait to see what happens there. I'm like, and why is this being disapproved?
Well, they're going to say it's more than one subject, but it isn't. It's about our elections. It's about election integrity.
It's all encompassed. You cannot separate nothing out of that. So again, we're looking for sponsors. And when we have our sponsors, we take it there. And then from there, we're working on some other things too, like setting up the website and tracking all the people who want to do the get signatures. So we're working on that, and we should have most of that, if not all of that, done by the time the Secretary of State's approve it. So our group is. So
let's back up just a little bit.
Okay. Well, you must have found something on there.
No, I'm wondering. Explain to me how they can disapprove of this.
They can only.
Where have you been in the last 10 years?
They can only. And legally, they can only approve it as to form. Like if the margins are too small, or according to the rules they have, it's just a form. They really can't. But they can. In the past, they've rejected some by saying it's more than one subject area, but it isn't. That's why I said that. That's probably the only way they could reject it, but it isn't. You have to address all these things if you want election integrity, and right now we just don't have election integrity.
But again, Paul and Shiloh, we're looking at it from this side to do what's right.
Yeah.
They're looking at it, this is going to expose me, I'm losing my power.
Right.
Two different perspectives looking at the same sheet.
Yeah.
So you may not see, hey, how could they did not disapprove? But when they come look at it, it says, we're going to do everything to stop this out, because once it's approved, we're done. So basically, one or two things. Either they're going to make sure it doesn't pass during an election, or there's some. Because think about it. Because our even not just in our state government, but even federal government, they know they're doing a lot of illegal things. They're doing a lot of illegal things. They don't want to be exposed, because if this works, and they know they can go back to 2022, where all those are, where some of those officials properly elected, those same, and if they weren't, look what legislation they passed during 2022. See, it opens up a whole type of can of worms that they don't want. So, myself, I would love to see it pass, but I would not be surprised they would do something. They say, I'm going to give it to the Attorney General, and he can see what he. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's going to be surprising.
Well, we know what they did with term limits after it did pass, and then they. Oh
Yeah.
goodness! I mean, it's.
And that's why we went this way, as far as a constitutional measure, where and make it active right then and there, so the legislation can't touch it.
You'll see
Gotcha.
that one of the line items is
What is
in
that?
this is that sponsors of initiated measures cannot be held criminally or civilly liable.
Gotcha.
So they can't weaponize the state agencies against the people doing the initiative. They just can't. And that's fair. You know why? Because state legislators have immunity as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Marvin, on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you guys' time,
No
and as
problem.
this goes on, so when do you guys? What's your timeline for taking it to the Secretary of State's office?
We're gonna have to get back on that with you on that.
Okay. Okay. With that, I guess I don't really have anything else. Do you guys have anything you want to add? I'm looking to see if there's any. Is there any questions out there? You know, this is a subject that we've been working on for a long time. So, is there any questions out there for either of these two gentlemen? And if somebody wants to sponsor it or contribute financially, who should they get a hold of?
Lydia.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, excuse me. Oh, goodness. I apologize. I'm still trying to get over this cough.
Well, that's okay, Charlotte.
So, with that, then I guess I'll let you guys go. And again,
Okay.
I appreciate you guys being on, and we're gonna do this again. So, I'm really excited about this actually. So, and we'll do some more talking before I go to Missouri as well. So,
All right. Sounds
Thank
good.
you. Appreciate
All
it.
right.
fair enough, guys.
Fair enough.
Yep.
All right. Have
Thank
a good
you.
have a
Yep.
good evening.
You
All right,
too.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right. This is going to be a good deal, I do believe. So we'll have more info as they're ready to do that. So before I let you guys go, I have an announcement to make. I'm going to be having a new co-host start next week, and I'm excited about that. So I think it'll be pretty good to have more than just me on here. So Marvin Lepp has agreed to be my co-host, so we're going to have him on. He's going to start next week, and we'll go from there. So that should be interesting. I'm looking forward to having Marvin. He's contributed to the show behind the scenes for me as well as just being a good personal friend, and so I'm looking forward to that. Throughout this week, I will be having some announcements as what is going on in Missouri with the Lindell event. I'm going to be having some news on how you guys can watch live on the 16th and 17th. It's going to be important that you guys do watch, because they're going to be announcing some pretty good stuff on the 17th. They weren't really saying too much or tight-lipped about it, but they're going to have a call to order on the 17th, and we're hoping that will take place. Then that'll start on the 18th. So with that, I am going to sign off, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and happy trails.